very, very involved, who may be leading a Bible study. And I'm not that kind of believer. Like those kids are like hardcore, or those kids are really, really devout. And that's just not me. That's a different level. And it's the same. I heard adults say it as well. I heard a gentleman I know, who was kind of describing the same thing. We go to church on Sundays. We pray occasionally at dinner. And I heard him say, "Oh, we're nothing like our neighbors, though." Oh my goodness. Our neighbors, they volunteer at food drives. They volunteer at orphanages. Even the mom went on a short-term mission trip. He said they're on a different level. They're not on our level. And Jesus is saying, no, no, no. The key words, anyone, if anyone. So there's absolutely one standard. And also, I love how Jesus leaves nothing hidden. Anyone ever stayed at a hotel? I don't personally like hotels. I like what Miss Nina talked about, camping, spending time with the Lord. But my wife loves a hotel every now and then when we travel. And the thing I don't like about hotels is you find a price online, say 79.99, and then you go to check out and it's $105, and you go, wait, what happened? The price was 79.99 online. Well, they say, oh, well, they start to explain the hidden fees and the fine print. Anyone ever had this? I just absolutely love how Jesus turns that completely upside down. So whether you follow him from day one or whether you're one of the 12, he hides nothing. He's upfront about the cost, and it is a heavy cost. And he does not shy away. I say he doesn't hide the costs or the cross of following him. There's absolutely one standard. So I'm going to try to weave some highlights of my story into this. So in 2006, I was just graduated high school. I went to a Christian camp after I graduated in Texas. It was called Rock Conference. And for whatever reason, similar to my uncle inviting me to speak here, the camp director invited me to speak on the last day, out of the blue, share my testimony. And I didn't want to do it, but I did it because I called myself a disciple and a believer. After I got done, two people approached me, adults, what I thought them were, hardcore disciples. They approached me and they both had the same word from the Lord for me. And the word was, I believe God's going to call you to vocational ministry sometime in the future. And I kind of, nodded, smiled, and I agreed. And then walking away, I just kind of chuckled and I said, no, not me. That is not that I'm not that level of believer. I'm here, and what they're talking about's up here. And God used that, and it pricked my heart. And I didn't believe it, but I never forgot it. I stuck it in the back of my head. And what's sad is I still call myself a disciple, and I didn't even have the courage to follow what the Holy Spirit was leading me to. So I would say that's where my journey into vocational ministry started, was that prick on my heart. So number one, being a disciple is absolutely non-optional. There's one standard. Second thing, being a disciple is unpredictable. So if we look at verse 26, he gives a range. He talks about father, mother, wife, children, brothers, and sisters. And this is really easy to gloss over, but what he's doing is he's giving I'd say the course of normal life for that time, what a normal life, what a normal agenda looked like. See, it's hard, we relate everything to our Western society, Americanized society, but back then, everything was dominated by the family. It was a patriarchal, family-oriented, family-dominated society back then. Uh, your lives completely revolved around your family. So I would say our equivalent would be like our agenda is self. If we're more of an individualistic society. So the equivalent, just so you give you a parallel, college, got to go to college. You hear it all the time after you graduate. Got to find your dream job, your dream career, and make good money. Um, if you want, you can get married. Nowadays, it's not even expected, because it's all you're the god of your own life in most of America. If you do get married, have kids, save a lot of money, retire, right? That not the course of American life. With Jesus, what he was doing was he was laying out a normal agenda for life back then. It all revolved around your mom and dad first, then your wife, then your kids, and then your extended family. So what's Jesus saying? What I believe he's saying is this. I know this is the normal agenda for life, but you have to be willing to kiss it all goodbye. You have to be willing to kiss it all goodbye. Um, in other words, I think he'd also say, don't you dare come to me with your agenda and fit me in. Don't you dare use me for your agenda. Um, as I was studying this really hit home with me. Uh, so I guess in my younger days in my faith journey, I really kind of believed this, that Jesus would make me a better, and I came to him to be a better person, to be a better brother, to be a better um, son. And what Jesus is saying, he's saying, I won't be used. I'll do all those things for you, but not when you come to me for such. First and foremost, you have to come to me for me. I won't be used. And I know I grew up in the church, so I have this vision of Jesus as this mild and meek, cuddling with lambs kind of picture that we get in Sunday school. And it's true. That is true about him, but I never saw the other side. And that's that he's a lion. He's a lion of the tribe of Judah. And I love this quote. Jesus, I'm sorry, C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia. If anyone's ever heard it. Well, of course, the lion is Aslan in the trilogy, and he of course represents Jesus. Well, the little girl, when she hears about the lion, she goes, "Ooh, a lion! Is he safe?" To which they reply, "Safe? No, he's not safe. He's a lion, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you." And man, that quote just Jesus is a roaring lion. If we come to him for safety first and safety alone, I think we're missing a whole other side of him. Absolutely. He's saying, I will not be tamed. I won't be tamed. And for me, I was literally kind of using him as I say a means to an end. Think of you want something out of a vending machine. What do? You take a coin or a dollar out of your pocket, put it in, and then what you want comes out. He's saying, I won't be used. Don't make me a means to your end. He's saying, your life is the means, and I'm the end. Your life's the means, and I'm the end. So I used to think this was about my success through him. And what I found out through my discipleship journey is this is about his success through me and through us, if you call yourself a disciple. So to carry on in my life after 2006, of course, I had a plan. I had a predictable plan because I thought I was a disciple, but I was deceiving myself. So my plan was to finish college, get that dream job or start working. And then because I still had that word from the people who I met in 2006, I still had in the back of my head. So I said, Lord, I'm not going to pursue vocational ministry, but you know what? I'll support it. I'll raise money. I'll start raising money for missionaries. So in 2011, I finished school, started working, and then every opportunity I could, I started to raise money for missionaries. Um, it was all very predictable. In the beginning, it was really fun. I did a lot of tours. I toured across the country, spoke at churches, spoke at different organizations, and there was one ministry that was really near and dear to my heart. I met the gentleman in college. He was a not a missionary. He's actually a national an evangelist and preacher from Uganda. And my goal was just to support him with my friend. Our goal was just to support his ministry, and it was great. But in the bottom of my heart, I knew it wasn't what the Lord had called me to. But yeah, the second thing we learn is being a disciple is absolute. It's unpredictable. You have to be willing to throw away the script, and I wasn't. I wasn't. Thank goodness for His mercy. So number 3, we talked about discipleship being non-optional. We talked about it being unpredictable. Now we get to that 4-letter word, the H word. It's really confusing. Is hate. Why would Jesus use this word, hate? So we know this Jesus to say in the Sermon on the Mount, you should love your enemies. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So the opposite, the other extreme. And even we know our Jesus to be the one who's, while he's being crucified, asking the Father, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So how could he use this word hate? What was Jesus thinking? Okay, so here's what I've learned, and I've really leaned on 2 scholars that I really I look up to. I would call them my spiritual mentors, Tim Keller and Dr. William Barclay, and they've really helped me kind of unpack this word hate. So what I've learned in the Bible is hate is used in 2 different ways. It's 2 different words. It can be used actively. When you hate someone, you're hostile towards someone, or it can be used in biblical terms. It can be used as comparatively. And the best, that's still a little confusing, but the best example that they gave and that I could find was Genesis 29, verses 30 and 31. And we all know the story of Jacob. He had 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. Well, in verse 30, it says Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. So he loved them both. He loved Rachel more than Leah. That was comparative. And then in the next verse, verse 31, and this is our hint into that comparative hate word, it says, when the Lord saw Leah was hated. So it's not a hate, it's not an active hate. Jacob didn't actively hate his wife Leah. He wasn't hostile toward her. It was when you compared his love for Rachel to his love for Leah, it made it look like hate. That's just how much greater it was. So what's Jesus saying then? Because he uses this word, this comparative word hate. What's he saying? And here's what I believe. He's saying, this is the kind of love that I want. This is the kind of love that I want and the kind of love that I offer. So he's laying out all these different loves to these different people, and we see it. He says, you see your love for your father and your mother? The Greeks would call that storge love. It was a very strong familial love, very affectionate for family, for mother and father. He's saying, do you see your love for your spouse, your wife? That was what the Greeks would call eros. That was a passionate love. That was a love between male and female. He's saying, do you see how you love your children? That would be a philia love. Yes, that would be cherish. Cherish. You see how all the loves are different? Each one's different for each person. He's saying, take all those loves, take every one of those, take all the loves you know. He says, I want that and I offer that. I want that love and I offer that love. And in fact, he says, I want to be your Rachel. I want you to be deeply emotional about me, deeply emotional. Like we said, Jacob loved Leah, but it was more of duty. It was more of duty to his marriage, whereas his love for Rachel was his delight. And can I tell you, living both sides of this coin, delight is so much more powerful than duty. Delight is so much more powerful than duty. In his presence, there's fullness of joy. Fullness of joy. Here's what he's not saying though, because we have to be careful. He's not saying that duty, volition, obedience, he's not saying those aren't important. They are. He's not saying don't let your emotions and your feelings rule over you. What he's saying is that duty and volition and getting the job done, that's not the essence of the love I want. It's not the essence of the love I give. The essence of the love I want is deeply emotional. He wants us. He wants to be the Rachel. He doesn't want to be the Leah. We see it in the Bible all over. Martha and Mary. Martha was all about volition and mission and serving him. He said Mary's chosen the better thing. And what was Mary doing? She was she was at his feet. It was emotional for her. And I think that's the love he wants from us. So an example, stars are out right now, are they not? The stars never go away. But you can't see them because the sun's the brightest star in the sky. He's saying, I want to be the sun. I want to be your Rachel. I want to be the sun. Your other loves don't go away. They're just the brightness of the sun floods them. They're still there. All your other relationships are still there. My love will flood. It'll flood their light and actually give them light. It'll make those relationships even better. It's the right ordering of loves. I think that's what he was trying to say. So he could have used a different word if he just meant, I just want to be first. Well, I've heard a lot of teachers teach that. Jesus just wanted to be first. He could have used a different word, though, and he does all around the Bible. And he does not use that word first. He uses that comparative hate love. And that's just how I can't. It's a very searching test. I've never read it like that, never thought about it, never experienced that before until recently. But I think he's absolutely saying you have to be deeply emotional about me. So the third thing is discipleship's deeply emotional. Um, so again, my story, I had no emotional love for Jesus. My love was very dutiful. It was very much like Jacob's love for Leah. Um, it was very strong. In 2011, I was just reading my diary. I kept a diary in 2011 as I was touring around the country, raising ministry support. And I read in my diary, man, I think it was, I don't know, day 5 of the trip that I'd started. It was a 65-day trip. And day 5, it said, I want so badly to make God proud. That's what I put in the diary. I want so badly to make him proud. And I could just read, I didn't know it at the time, but reading it, I could just see the volition and the duty that I was striving for and striving for. And I did not know about the emotional love. Now I'm thinking back, where did that come from? How do you get that? Some of you may be thinking about that now. How it seems so abstract. How do I have that emotional love like that for Jesus? And I think it leads us into our fourth teaching point. Verse 27, he tells us, whoever does not bear his own cross cannot be my disciple. So we're told to bear or take up our own cross. And I found it interesting. Notice he doesn't say, because he's teaching at this time. He's traveling the countryside, and he literally has crowds following him. And he's teaching every opportunity he can get. Notice he doesn't say to take up my teachings. He doesn't say take up my teachings. Why would he say that? Why would he say cross? I never knew this, but if he would have told us to take up his teachings, that would just challenge us to strive, more duty, more volition, strive. And he doesn't say it. Can you imagine if Jesus would have said, take up the Sermon on the Mount after you just heard it? All you have to do is be pure in heart. All you have to do is be absolutely poor in spirit. All you have to do is love your enemies. Can you imagine if he said, take that up the day after you heard it? It would crush us. I know it would crush me. There's no way. I'd last maybe an hour or two, and I'd be absolutely, I'd be disappointed, to say the least. So why take up our cross? Why? He also doesn't mean, I've heard this a lot. I don't think he doesn't mean dealing with a rude neighbor or a irritating coworker. I've heard people say, this is my cross to bear. I have this irritating coworker I have to deal with. And I don't think he means anything that makes us weary or it gives us trouble. I don't think that's what he means by taking up my cross either. So here's what I have for this teaching. Jesus doesn't want us striving, and he doesn't want us more determined. He says, take up your cross because he wants us dead. He wants us dead. I know it sounds crazy, but it's all over the New Testament. The minute you believed in Jesus Christ, you died on the cross with him. I never understood it. The minute you believed in Jesus Christ, you died on the cross with him. Apostle Paul puts it like this, Colossians 3. Turn there real quick. Colossians 3, verses 2 and 3. This is what he says. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. You died the second you put your faith in him. So point number 4, I would say, is this: discipleship, and tying point number 3. Discipleship is emotional because it's completely positional. Discipleship is emotional because it's completely positional. So even just explain that a little bit more. Several years ago, I was in a small group at my church, and the leader of the small group, just out of the blue, he said, let's do an exercise. So we said, okay. He said, on a 1 to 10, think about this, and you can do it right now if you want. On a 1 to 10, mark what your score is, with 1 being a filthy, dirty sinner and 10 being a saint. It's a pretty bold exercise. So as you think about that, and I know this exercise now, but as I did it, I was thinking, and I don't know, there's probably 6 or 7 of us in the group, and then we all kind of shared what our scores were openly. There were some 2s, there were some 3s. I think I said I was a 5 or 6, and we all kind of explained why. And then the very last guy, he gave his score, and he said, I'm a 10. He said, I'm a saint. And we were all like, whoa, okay, buddy. Okay, buddy. So we were all beating ourselves up about our score and how we could never measure up and all the sin we were in. And then he said he knew he was a 10, not because of what he did, because of his position in Christ. And that was a big teaching moment for me. Our position in Christ. Discipleship is deeply emotional when you realize it's completely positional. Once you realize the only thing you have to offer is literally your sin. We have no righteousness of our own. The only righteousness we ever have is his. And it's such a freeing teaching point. Again, Paul in Galatians 2:20, just to drive the point home even more. Galatians 2:20, I'm crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. If that doesn't make you emotional, that emotional love, woo, that makes me emotional now. So in other words, I'll say it again, this discipleship is emotional because it's completely positional. We live in the shadow of the cross. So again, back to my story. I already mentioned to you about my striving, about my goals, my duties to obey him with volition, with obedience. And everything started falling apart as far as the ministry, the raising funds for the ministry went. The Lord just he derailed my plans. I could hear the Holy Spirit telling me, because I'm still calling myself a disciple at this point. I felt him telling me, will you obey me now? Things are falling apart. Will you obey me now? And will you pursue vocational ministry? And by this point, I'm married. I have a daughter at this point, and still, I still did not live in the shadow of that cross. I wanted nothing to do yet with dying to myself, and it was still about me, even though I said I was a disciple. It's amazing how we can deceive ourselves. So I wasn't even close to living positionally in the shadow of the cross. I was married and I enlisted in the military. I left my wife and my daughter. I enlisted in the Air Force. He absolutely derailed that. I didn't even hit my what they call permanent, when you could be called permanent party in the military. I didn't even make that day. I think it's 185 days. I got hurt. I hurt my back in the first 185 days, and I was injury, whatever the word is. I can't think of it. Yeah, I got out on injury. Um, Still wasn't at my bottom yet. I moved my family out west to Utah. I drugged my family out there and moved on to what I thought was going to be just a different calling in my life, a different career. So we moved out west, and things just kept going downhill. Uh, my marriage was starting to become very rocky. Uh, my faith journey was, at this point, I'm even teetering on, am I, is this worth it? Am I going to continue on this faith journey? And I'll never forget, my wife came up to me one day in Utah and she said, she pretty much gave me an ultimatum. She said, "Hey, I think the kids and I had two kids at this point." She said, "I think the kids and we were renting our house in Orlando." She said, "I think the kids and I are going to pack up and move back to Orlando." And that was a big wake up call for me. Um, the Lord was definitely using that. She had been praying about it, and I hadn't. And man, just by the grace of God, I agreed with her. I said, "Okay, we'll move back to Orlando." And I still considered myself a disciple. That's the crazy thing at this point. But obviously, I wasn't, because I had so many conditions on being a Jesus follower. So many conditions. And that leads me to I guess that's my fifth point. We've said discipleship's non-optional. It's unpredictable. It's deeply emotional because it's completely positional. And the fifth, my last point, this may seem obvious, but discipleship is unconditional. It's unconditional. Um, Jesus said, "Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me can't be my disciple." We don't think about this often because people aren't hung on crosses these days. But man, this they thought about this all the time back then, because this was the main capital punishment back then. There was finality in that statement, bearing your cross. So before they hung you on a cross, they hung the cross on you. You wore the cross beam across your shoulders, and you made that walk to where they were gonna to hang you on the cross. And then when people saw you with that cross beam on you, they knew that was a one-way walk. That was the last thing you'd ever do. Last thing you'd ever do. Do we understand how weird that is? And if we're thinking of it in today, this is what I put. Today, that would be like a politician who says, "Join my party, follow me, strap yourself in the electric chair, let's go." No joke. That's the equivalent. That's the equivalent. That was the last thing you'd ever do when you bared your cross. You were a dead man walking. So the cross, bearing your cross, means discipleship is completely unconditional. There's no buts, there's no ifs, and there's no ands. It's completely unconditional. So we've seen he's destroyed excuses of society back then. It was a family dominated patriarchal society. Like I said, He's destroyed the excuses of not following him and giving him complete devotion because of your family, because of your wife, any part of your family. He's destroyed those. Now with the cross, he destroys every idol, he destroys every excuse in our me dominated American society, the individualism. He's destroyed all those excuses too with the cross. Because the cross means this: when you bear your cross, you're under arrest. Jesus is saying, if you decide to do this, count the cost, because it means you're under arrest. Your hands are up. You're not in charge of your own life anymore. You're completely mine. There is no decisions for you to make. And we think becoming a disciple, a lot of us do. I thought this too. Almost everyone probably who's been on the faith journey has thought this at some point. We think becoming a disciple means the start to an easier life, a smoother life, one that we start to get blessed by God. And while those things can absolutely be while those things can absolutely be true, the one thing he guarantees is suffering, is that cross. I didn't know what that meant. In my story in 2021, so 2 years ago, the Lord showed me finally what unconditional discipleship looked like. So December of 2021, my whole family got really sick. This was the heyday of COVID. I got COVID. My wife got COVID. My mom and dad got COVID, and we were sick. We were pretty sick, but not what you see, what you saw and heard on the news. Sick. So we all had it for about 2 weeks. We got better. My mom seemed to be getting better, and then I think 2.5 weeks or so later, man, she just plummeted her conditions. She still had COVID. I remember it was the day after my son's second birthday. And his birthday is on the 18th. On the 19th, my mom had to go to the hospital. She couldn't really breathe anymore. Um, that was the 19th. On the 20th, we got really bad news. The doctors told us, "Hey, it's not looking good for your mom. She probably has less than 10% chance to live." And we couldn't even see her because it was COVID. Only one person could be in the room with her. So I just remember being outside the hospital, and my sister was the one with her, my older sister. And I remember her April, she's coming out of the hospital, just a wreck, just a mess, crying. I said, "April, how was mom? I know you got to see her. You're the last one to see her." She said, "Paul, the ventilator team, they were right outside the room. I could see all of them. They were just waiting to rush the room. That's how bad it was. They were counting the seconds they could get in there to intubate my mom." And my sister was frantic. I said, "What were mom's last words?" And this is when I finally understood what it meant to have no conditions on discipleship. She said, "Mom's last words were, I trust Jesus with my eternity. I trust Jesus with my eternity." And that's when God finally broke into me. He said, "That's what being a unconditional disciple looks like. And when death's looking you in the face, can say, I trust you." Man, I think it was less than 2 months later, I was starting my journey to vocational ministry. 2 months after that night, I had no idea how it was going to work, how the Lord was going to get me into ministry. I just trusted him for the first time. God, he did just miracle after miracle. And now I work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. But I'll close with this. He says, "Take up your cross." And obviously, we've seen my mom had literally done that. And just God's wisdom, he uses the cross. Because think about this: if it would have been, if he would have said, take up your electric chair, it's quick. It happens quick. If he would have said, take up lethal injection, seconds. He would have said, take up the firing squad. Bam! You hear the crack of guns, you're done. He says, take up your cross. What we know about the cross is it's slow. It's a slow death. I've heard of people being on a cross for 12 hours, 20 hours. It's slow, it's painful. But I think he uses that because he's patient. He's patient with us. Man, he was patient with me. I said I became a disciple when I was about an 8 or 9. From 8 or 9 to age 30, 32. It was a process, just like the cross, a slow process. I'm thankful for his patience. Let me pray for you guys. Father in heaven, we thank you. We thank you for your word. We thank you for your son, the word, the Logos. We thank you that you're patient with us. We thank you that we have the opportunity and the privilege to be a disciple, not by anything we've done, but completely positional and living in the shadow of your cross. Thank you for this church. Thank you for thank, thank, thank you for the opportunity that I had to share your word, to share a little bit of my story today. Please be with anyone whose heart's been pricked, who's just maybe searching about some of the points that we went over today. God, you were patient with me. You were patient with the 11 who stayed with you. God, you're patient with us. Thank you. In Jesus' name.